Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for breaking confidentiality and making a surgeon lose his medical license? 6 years ago, my 35 male daughter died on the operating table during a complicated heart surgery. Her mother and I were told beforehand the operation was risky and had a 50% chance of failing, but without it, she would have no other options. We were obviously devastated, but accepted that it was not an improbable outcome. Our relationship wasn't able to survive her passing, and we divorced a year later, partially due to substance use on my part and emotional infidelity on hers. I started attending AA meetings about 3 years ago, and after working with a sponsor, started doing much better about 6 months in. I began attending a different AA group after my sponsor moved, and one of the members at the new group looked extremely familiar. I couldn't quite place him, but after a couple meetings, he talked about being a surgeon. That's when I realized he was one of the surgeons involved in my daughter's surgery. I recognized his first name, looked through my daughter's hospital records, and figured it out. A few meetings later, when he expressed interest in being sponsored, I approached him after the meeting and offered to sponsor him, or at least meet up and get to know each other. This isn't unusual for AA. I didn't tell him he had operated on my daughter. He opened up to me while we met and confessed he had performed multiple surgeries while under the influence, and in at least 2 surgeries where he was incapacitated, the patient died on the operating table. I was livid. I had no idea if he was drunk during my daughter's surgery, and I'm not even sure if he knows. But from what I gathered, he was definitely drinking and operating for at least a few years before my daughter. I tried to get more information about the patients, but he didn't divulge. I managed to stay composed, telling him the same BS AA usually tells us: it's a disease. It's not your fault. You deserve forgiveness. I asked if he wanted to meet up some other time, and he agreed. The next time we met up, I secretly recorded him, his voice, and his face, admitting to operating while drunk. Our state does not require two-party consent, so this was not illegal. After a couple more individual meetings, during which time I was acting as his sponsor, I received more information about the patients. I spoke to a lawyer, then spoke to the hospital he worked at, presenting my recordings as evidence. The hospital began an investigation, and he was eventually fired and lost his medical license. When I discussed this with another member of AA, he got extremely angry, told me I was breaking confidentiality, and alienated me from the other members, banning me from the meeting. I believe I did the right thing, as this surgeon's actions were putting other people, including potentially my daughter, in danger. But I also see how they feel, as though their privacy was violated. Am I the a-hole for recording what an AA member said in confidence to their sponsor and making them lose their medical license? Edit. Since so many people bring this up, I don't care that I was banned from the group. AA, at least the meetings I attended, were toxic and failed to hold members responsible for their actions under the guise of being understanding of someone who is sick. Bro, he killed 2 people. Should you have not broken AA confidentiality? Maybe. But even professional psychologists have to break confidentiality if a patient is a danger to themselves or others. At least, was my situation in my state when I was a minor. He could have killed many more, and you have every right to report him. You saved the lives he would have lost. Drinking and driving is a criminal offense. Why would drinking and operating into someone be any different? Edit. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. What he did is right, but you can't expect the AA member to accept this. He did the right thing, but broke a rule while doing it, so he needs to accept the consequences for doing so. He doesn't regret what he did, so kudos for saving other lives. Opted break the rules, but AA is supposed to be about accepting the wrongs you did while you were drinking and make amends. In this case, the surgeon should have admitted it himself and accepted the consequences. Yes, the key is the make amends part. I think if the surgeon had said he is haunted by these deaths, and if only he could meet the families to fully apologize and do everything he could to somehow make it better, then maybe Op might have had second thoughts. But the surgeon didn't. The surgeon is not doing the steps. Op did the exact right thing. But Op, every AA meeting is different. It sounds like you got the wrong one for you. Perhaps you might try again with a different group. The surgeon should have confessed what he done, especially if his actions caused the death of several people. Being in AA is not a get out of jail free card. Not the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for telling my niece that my husband is dead? My husband died last year. We have 2 beautiful children. When he died, my sister made the trip up to the funeral. She lives in a different state. Her husband stayed home with their kid. I didn't think that was weird. Fast forward a year and my sister decided to visit me, with kid and husband in tow. At first it went well, the kids were playing. Then my niece asked me when my husband would be back. I was taken off guard and she says from his business trip. Some prying makes me realize my sister never told her he died. Now, in other circumstances, I would let it go. But my kids are still adjusting to daddy being gone. We are all in therapy. I didn't want them to hear this and think he was coming back, so I sat my niece down and explained my husband died. When she asked why, I kept it simple and said he was sick. She was fine and didn't seem upset. Well, my sister is pissed. She said that's her daughter and she doesn't understand death. I said I have a kid younger and she gets it. She told me that I should have asked her first. I said she should have told me she was advertising my husband as alive. Bill is torn between us. Am I the a-hole? Your sister is Tahir. If she thinks a child can't handle the concept of passing on, what does she think you've been telling your own children? And how did she think that was going to make your children feel when their cousin is acting like their dad is just away on a trip? Kids are often much more resilient than we think. NTA. My cousin passed from breast cancer. Her daughter was young at the time. She was devastated, but still had the mindset to accept her mother was no longer in pain and in a better place. Kids are definitely usually able to handle more than we tend to give them credit for. Edit to at NTA. The sister is absolutely tar. My cousin has a mental age of 7 and her parents never told her my brother passed away. 4 years later, they came to my wedding, and my cousin kept asking me where my brother was, over and over, and her parents just stood there the entire time and said nothing. I was furious. Every time she asked it was like I was being stabbed. It hurt so much, and her mom just stood there looking at me waiting for my answer. I don't hold it against my cousin, but I'm still angry with her parents. NTA 7 is old enough to understand death. How did your sister not expect your niece to ask or comment anything when they were visiting you and your kids? How did your sister not tell you before? I'm really sorry for your loss, Opus, but you're by no means Tahir. AITA for exploding at my brother's fiancé. My younger brother Mark has been engaged to Sarah for 2 years, but I've known her a lot longer than that. We were in the same year at school, and she and her friends made my life hell for years. She was so awful, and I was happy to finish school and never see her again. Mark studied medicine and became a doctor, and I didn't know this, but so did Sarah. Obviously she's a few years ahead of him, but they ended up working at the same hospital. They started going out, fell in love, etc. My parents have accepted her with open arms. Keep in mind they know that this is the girl who bullied me for years, who they used to go into the school to complain about, and who cried her way out of it and acted she was the victim. None of that has even been mentioned. They were perfectly happy to accept her because Mark loves her. Mum has bonded with her and they are always doing stuff. She spends more time shopping for clothes or shoes or whatever with Sarah than she does doing anything with me. I live 5 minutes away from my parents, and by now I barely speak to them. Mark and Sarah were meant to marry, but the madness going on meant they had to postpone it until next year. They came for dinner with my parents yesterday, and I was invited too. At family events I just avoid her, because I don't want a row, but this time she tried to talk to me. I was stressed from work so wasn't in the mood. Sarah tried to provoke me. She asked if I'd like to come out shopping with her, saying she could get me something a bit nicer. She used to make fun of my clothes all the time, so there's no way that wasn't a dig. I lost my temper and went mad at her. I said I don't like her and never will, that I won't be coming to her wedding, and that I hope they have to postpone so that Mark has time to realize what a horrible C*NT she is. She ran straight to Mark crying, saying all the things I'd said. He went mad at me for upsetting her, and my parents took her side, saying I was awful for wishing that on that. I was told to leave and did exactly that. My mum texted me later saying I should apologize. I don't see why I should. I don't like this woman and I never will. She is still trying to bully me, and she has my brother wrapped around my little finger. I don't have to be nice to her. I don't think I said anything wrong. I just told her what I think in no uncertain terms. Not the a-hole. She got you. I highly recommend therapy. A good therapist will help you deal with this situation better in the future. You deserve none of this. I'm sorry you've been put through this. This might feel superfluous given your family is fully aware of the history, but you need a script to explain your point of view to your parents. Something like, you know she has bullied me before, and she's continuing to do that still, and you are asking that I should apologize. You are only pushing me away. You are totally not the a-hole, but she's a lifelong bully, hence better at manipulating you than you can be at defending yourself. Keep your distance and protect yourself. Not the a-hole times 100. She bullied you for years. How can your family just expect you to forget the trauma just because she's engaged to your brother now? That's awful parenting on your folks' part. And these digs are so uncalled for. If she had apologized for her behavior, things could be different. But no, you're not the a-hole and your folks and Sarah are a-holes. She should firstly apologize for everything she's put you through, and your parents should try and take your side. Not the a-hole. But I will give it with a slight reminder that this person is a master manipulator. That they will push you, needling you until you explode, and then claim that they are the victim. Haven't you noticed this? I'm guessing you are in your 30s. You should know better than to fall for that trap. There are a few ways to counter her behavior. 1. Grey rock. You essentially put them on an information diet, single word answers and just keep them always at arm's length. You give them no additional information against you, and most importantly you don't give them the emotional response that they so desperately want. 2. Cut them out. Just cut them out of your life. Walk away, they are dead to you. 3. Killing them with kindness. Speak generously, act graciously, meet a need, listen to their vapid and inane subjects and of course, always smile at them. I don't think this will work, but it's worth a shot. Good luck. Am I the a-hole for bringing up a report against my guidance counselor and getting her taken out of the running for an award plus potentially hurting her career? This story starts a few years back, but the events I feel I might be the a-hole for happened this past week. So short backstory, I'm chronically ill, and I used to be out sick from school for months at a time. I was in middle school the first time I was out of school for a long period of time. It started out really hard to get the proper documentation for my absences, and then for an extended medical leave. Aka, I needed to be tutored from home, because I couldn't physically come to school. Eventually I got a doctor who was extremely helpful, and had continued contact with the school. The issue of truancy that popped up, because of the time between my first absence and my first tutoring session was dropped, and it seemed like everything was going smoothly. However, when I started feeling better I had to slowly transition back to school. On my first day back I was supposed to go to 3 classes, then meet with my guidance counselor to discuss how I was feeling. While I was walking to my second period class and talking to friends that I hadn't seen in a while, my guidance counselor pulled me away from them and told me, these are the exact words, quoted from the report we made years ago, if you are absent one more day and cause another rounds of work for me, I'll raise truancy charges against your family and have you taken away from your mother. We later reported her to the principal. They didn't care, she's still employed. Here's where I think I'm a bit of an a-hole. 4 years later I'm in my new counselor's office talking about my college application process. My new counselor tells me that my old counselor is being highly considered for most loved staff member. I kinda chuckled at the news and told my current counselor about what happened and the report my family made. Apparently this caused some discussion about the old counselor. She is no longer being considered for the award, and now from what the school has told my family privately the matter is being reopened and looked into. Something about her having multiple complaints. I feel pretty guilty and like a bit of an a-hole because it happened so long ago. It's not exactly a good thing to potentially ruin someone's career. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I didn't mention it, but I totally should have. I told a few family members about what was going on, and they told me that my actions were uncalled for because it happened so many years ago. They also said I was an a-hole because it was probably just one bad day. Hence my doubt. I also wanted to thank you all for being so kind and for giving me so many awards. I went to bed last night and had no idea it would blow up this way. I also finally understand what rip my inbox means. Thank you guys for clearing up that what she did was really bad. A lot of people used to tell me that it wasn't a big deal. I also totally forgot until 504s were brought up in the replies. While I was transferring into high school, she completely removed my 504 because she thought it was pointless. My mom had to go to the state to get it reinstated. A 504 plan is a plan which provides accommodations and protection for disabled students. So yeah, no more sympathy for her here. Thank you guys. Edit X2. I have to get to class, but I'll try to respond to replies later. Not the a-hole. You didn't ruin her career. Her lack of empathy did. She shouldn't be a counselor. And she has more than one complaint, so it's not on you. I've eaten enough crow in my life. I have little sympathy for others who need to have their share, you know? 4 years especially isn't that long in the case of a guidance counselor, since your bad behavior against school-aged children can absolutely affect them until they graduate, and potentially longer depending on college application status. Also, a bad day would be snarkily telling the student that they've made more work for you in the pre-scheduled meeting, tracking a child down in the hallway and telling them, publicly in front of their friends, that you'll have them taken away from their parents due to missing school from a chronic health problem is cruel and intentional. That woman doesn't deserve a career as a guidance counselor. Edit for comparison. Sure, that cop coerced you and busted you for trumped up allegations because you annoyed him, but that was 4 years ago. You can't fault him for that. But I'm still in prison and will have a criminal record following me for the rest of my life. SHHHH. Don't ruin someone's career over ancient history. This is more common than you'd think. Otherwise beloved staff members sometimes take out their aggression specifically on kids who need accommodation/special assistance because they see those kids as more vulnerable and less likely to fight back. It's ableism. They don't see kids with disabilities as being as deserving of their kindness or help. My mom's a teacher and has been doing homebound instruction for chronically ill kids who can't come into school for a while now. She's got some crazy stories about how administrators and teachers will just purposefully harass or make life more difficult for families and kids with disabilities, and it usually comes down to the fact that they blame the kid for making them do more work. By the way, making accommodation/processing the paperwork for kids in special circumstances isn't more work, it's literally their job. Not the a-hole. Multiple complaints means she's still doing this and getting away with it until a student who had a legit medical problem and is college bound wasn't as easily ignored. Now that complaints are piling up. Not the a-hole. She told a chronically ill child that if they continued to be ill and therefore forced her to do her job, she would get them taken away from their mother. She's the a-hole, along with whoever didn't fire her reprehensible bottom years ago after the initial report. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe and press the like button below.